Good afternoon, everyone. This is Frank Donaldson, and would like to welcome you to class number 8, 7 down and 3 more to go, as we enter into the final 3 classes of this online classroom course from UD and ISPD. As we always do, let us begin with prayer. Let us remember in God's holy presence. Lord God, we thank you that you promise to be with us always. Thank you that your presence is with us right now. Today we give you our hearts, our minds, and our lives. Come speak your words of life into our beings. We pray that you would deepen our comprehension, broaden our thinking, and transform our understanding of what we are about to study and cover. For you are our wise counselor, our perfect teacher, and our faithful friend. Thank you, Lord. Amen. Once again, thank you all for being with us for this class. We have been really thrilled with the information that has been coming in the homework assignments, full well realizing that especially as we look at months like October and November and on into December, these are busy months. And these are busy times. And in the students that are taking this class, we have many principals that are taking this class. And so I do applaud all of you, especially those of you who are in administration, those of you who are advancement development directors that are juggling 15 things at one time, for being able to keep up. May not be able to take the live class, but certainly have been able to keep up and share the homework assignments. Obviously, as we always do, taking a look exactly where we're coming from. As usual, not going to read this to you, but we have covered a lot of ground as we move on through those lessons that actually bring us up to our actually final lessons here over this class and the next 2. This class, as we know, will be concentrating on social media, also talking greatly about this culture of giving. We also are going to spend the majority of the class talking about creating your written strategic plan for development/advancement. And as we take a look at all of this, realizing that we have covered a lot of ground already. And for that, once again, do want to thank all of you who have kept up with this. It's been rather remarkable. In terms of the last class, moving into class 8, there were 2 really homework assignments, so to speak. One dealt with explaining how your annual fund or your annual appeal, your annual drive, whatever you call it, is organized and what processes you implemented. The other is if you're haven't done your first annual appeal, your annual fund, then what organization and processes would you plan to use? And then a 1 to 3 paragraph document that explains your alumni events, activities, processes, communication tools. And so with that, as we always do, we'd like to share some of the ones that come in. I think when we select the ones that we like to share, I find that these really are part of a representation. So it's not to the point where we're saying these are the best ones or whatever. This just simply means that, these represent the different types of schools that are taking the class. Here's one. This year, we were going to conduct our first annual fund drive. Since we were in dire need, we did not take a great deal of time to organize committees and chairs, as was explained in the classes. But we had proposed an idea to the board that spring to ask parishioners to adopt a student. We quickly created a letter that went out at the end of July, asking interested individuals and groups to adopt a student at a cost of $500 per year, payable in $50 per month increments. We were able to raise approximately $24,000 in pledges and income. What helped us was our pastor promoting it from the pulpit on Sunday. We are now in the process of communicating with our donors on a monthly basis. Interesting approach as you take a look at how you do this first. Here is another student in regards to the alumni. Our alumni outreach is mainly done through email, and we share news both on our website and newsletter. We invite our alumni students back to help us with our annual open house events as tour guides and to share with prospective families their experiences. We also host an alumni basketball tournament every March where classmates from as far back as the early 2000s come back and team up to play against other classes. This event is in its 9th year and continues to grow. The biggest feedback we get from this event is the alumni parents who come back and share with us how much they miss our community. We're always looking to expand, but the issue comes down to time, money, and resources, as it usually does. It kind of made me call to mind that one of the biggest trends we've seen over the last 10 years, especially with Catholic schools, both on the elementary as well as the secondary, is the engagement of past parents. Many of them were once heavily involved. And so once again, trying to engage them. What we're going to talk about in the third part of today's class, creating the written strategic plan for development, is an ideal opportunity to invite past parents to come back. Here's another one in regards to alums. In terms of alum events, at the beginning of the school year, the Advancement Office sponsors one of our major fundraisers, which we have seen 3 years of successful increases in the number of alums who attend the event, as well as the total dollars raised for tuition assistance. In the spring, the Advancement Office will be hosting an alumni reunion weekend, which will take place from Saturday to Sunday. This is the first time we are hosting such an event on campus. For the first time this year, we'll also be hosting more friend-raising events with our first 5K run and walk, as well as the revival of our Hall of Fame dinner. We're excited by all of the new alum names that are surfacing due to these events, which are fun, they're social, and they're full of alumni networking. And so I think that becomes an opportunity for us to look at different ways. Here's one that really talks about alum events, but the one that I wanted to just zero in on, the one alum event that has been happening for years now is the Alumni Band Night. At one of the first home basketball games in January, all band alumni are invited to dust off their instruments and play with the pep band for the game. It's a lot of fun for everyone, including the crowd, and non-band alumni often come back to listen. Maybe they do more than listen. Maybe they kind of have a chuckle every now and then, because if they were musicians like I once was and I had to pick up my guitar or whatever and try to play, it would be a joke too. Then last one, a couple of last ones. This one deals with the annual fund, and once again, kind of showing you a little bit of the different ways. The annual drive at our school includes a letter and a pledge envelope, which is sent out to all donors who gave the year before. Parishioners also receive statements of their gift along with all their donations to the parish. The parents hear about the drive at the State of the School address in February. More than likely that's during Catholic Schools Week, and turn in their form along with registration forms for the year. There's a little push at the pulpit, but we generally rely on past donors for the annual drive. This year, with the help of the enrollment team and school commission, we're talking with each family by phone. There will be a State of the School address in February, but prior to the meeting, the principal will have met with preschool through second grade parents for principal chats. During the chats, the gap will be explained along with why the annual fund. There will be a brochure this year, which will be sent along with a letter. The principal will be working with the school commission on how to talk with donors who usually give generously to the school. We have work to do, but we're heading in the right direction. That is really good to hear, because as I can tell, there are some things that quite possibly you can look at that can certainly be helpful. Let's do one more, and then we'll jump on into the class. This one deals with the annual fund in terms of how will you implement your first annual fund organization and processes. I would begin the annual fund immediately after Thanksgiving break and run it until the first part of January. The initial contact would be a report of the current state of the annual fund, including alternate ways to contribute other than monetary. This was disclosed how the money has been previously used, as well as the current needs of the school. The information will be communicated via email, Facebook, Twitter, flyers or brochures, enrollment packages, and by directly engaging people in enrollment meetings and delivering announcements made by stakeholders at the church. When asking for an annual fund contribution, we would suggest that people would select from a list of wants and needs that would constitute the purpose of the current year donation. When the money has been put to use, a thank you card will be sent to all donors explaining what the money has covered. Years ago, and the reason why I read that, years ago, it reminded me, I was working with a pre-K through 12 school in the Diocese of Columbus, Ohio. And they were just moving into development, and they really had not done a lot. And so, in terms of any annual fund, and so when working with a core team and then putting together that organization that we talked about, where you're looking at, your annual fund chairs and your division chairs and the like, one of the things that really impressed me was the school did an annual report that came out at the right after Labor Day, for first part of September. They'd closed their fiscal year on June 30th. And so they were moving into the next school year. And every time they did the annual report, I have not seen this in a number of years, so I don't know if they're still doing it this way, but I was so impressed by it. Their annual report every year was titled "Just as We Promised." And it really was that. They said that they were going to use the funds for this and this and this, and the annual report was what they did with that money. And just as we promised what we were going to do, we did it. And let us show you some examples. And of course, they listed donors and the like. Thought that was really a wonderful way to say we are being good stewards of what's being entrusted to us. So as we take a look, as we said in this class, we're looking at those lessons in the book that deal with stressing the value and use of social media, creating a culture of giving, and creating the written strategic plan for development. We'll spend a lot of time on lesson 21 because I think you'll see the value of that. But we certainly, as in the book, we certainly want to talk about social media. This has become, especially over the last 10 years, something that in many cases, many Catholic schools were not even thinking about, especially on the elementary school level 10 years ago. And so what I was thinking about when writing the book and then again writing the workbook, I was thinking when I first got started in development, I was a development director at an all-girls high school, and my first year was back in the 80s. And I remember how we used to communicate back then. Email was really just coming into play. Websites were, just coming into play, but really the telephone and direct mail, whether it be bulk or first class, whatever, those were the two main methods of communication. As you look at the tools that were in the toolbox back then, and you look at the tool that are in the toolbox today, it's vastly different. One of the things that we quickly realized was that one-on-one, eyeball-to-eyeball, person-to-person piece. So as we look at these evolving ways that Catholic schools have reached out, once again, even though we know the value of social media, there are still schools, and there are even dioceses, to an extent, who really have not fully adopted, have not fully embraced this whole idea of how valuable it is. One of the best books, I'm sure many of you have read this, that book called Who Moved My Cheese, that talks about the way we've always done things and how we need to change that. And so, one of the things that I find, especially, with social media and especially with our being able to segment our communication and target our communication, we certainly can develop Facebook pages for alums. We can even segment it into decades. We can do all kinds of things like that. But the whole key is, once again, and I found this in our work at ISPD, is being able to offer something that is really valuable information. Let me give you an example. With one of the schools that we work with, we have students, and I believe I mentioned this, we have students who do the calling. And with student calling, especially to alums, they will call and, invite them to consider a gift. They'll state exactly what the annual appeal or annual fund or annual drive is going to. And then they will, ask for contributions. We always make sure that they close the call by saying something like, by the way, sister and our principal wanted me to make sure that we ask you, is there any prayer requests that you have that you would like for us to pray for you and your family? And then secondly, one of the things we're interested in gathering is more information about our alums. Is there any news that quite possibly you have to share in terms of all kinds of things of moving or jobs or family, we'd love to be able to write that down. In fact, I have a card right in front of me right now that I'll be glad to write down and hand to Sister. And if it's okay with you, would like to share that in our next alumni newsletter. Well, as simple as those questions are, you'd be surprised at the number of people in this one particular. I'll give you the numbers. There were 800 calls that evening with 25 phones being worked. 800 calls. With those 800 calls, they actually were able to speak to 209 people. Of the 209 people with whom they spoke, they received information like this from 56 people. Now, that's 56 people who shared information, either prayer requests or information that could be put in an alumni or alumni newsletter. Or, once again, and that's what I mean by the last bullet point on this slide, remarkable content. When you do an alum communication, alums are interested in alums. I always ask in our workshops, I always say, when you get your alumni newsletter or you get a newsletter, where do you go? And this is a lot for the secondary schools, obviously, but where do you go? And most will tell me, I go to the class notes. I go to see, what are alums doing? So as you talk about that, I think it's important that remarkable content can come from the very people with whom we speak. In their book, Halligan and Shaw really challenge us to think differently, and that's all part of that lesson. And as we look at this in that last bullet point on that slide, we really encourage you to make sure, and I'm sure many of you have this, I know you do, just based upon what you've indicated and shared with us, but using Facebook, being able to use Twitter. I think Twitter has come about, especially with Catholic schools, elementary and secondary, more in the last 5 to 6 years than I've ever, than before. And of course, it's just come into its being. LinkedIn is, some people say, well, that's more of a professional kind of thing. I'm on LinkedIn. I've got many people that I'm connected to with LinkedIn, but that really is not for a Catholic school. But obviously, YouTube, Instagram, the main two we find and we see, are Facebook and Twitter. And of course, obviously, your website. Once again, as these authors indicate, being able to create that compelling content. And oftentimes, when you speak with people, especially in phone outreaches, when you speak with people in core team, when you speak with people in coffee meetings, when you speak with people, always asking, what is it that you really would want to hear? What is it you'd like to, would be valuable information to you? I've always been, in this last bullet point on this slide, we just got finished doing it yesterday at school, a short 2 to 3 minute promotional video, okay, that is going to go out on the website. It's going to be put on Twitter. It's going to be put on Facebook, and it's going to go out to an email to all parents. It's short. It can be done with an iPhone or an iPad. It can be done, and out it goes. I really encourage you, and I know there's a number of you that are doing this, but as you look at these, the changes that are taking place with our communication tools, as you look at this, as we've talked about this, we're talking about the ability to reach people, that obviously you didn't have before. One of the things that, that people say, what is the most valuable information you can gather from people? And obviously there is the basic information we know, in terms of address and all that. But I've always said that cell phone numbers and email addresses today are so important, because with cell phone numbers, you're able to do text messaging. You're able to do, get involved with that. And of course, some schools have gone on to create apps for their school. There's actually an app for the smartphone that parents can download. There are advantages to that. And then some people feel that can all be done with the website. So there's an argument on that. I've heard both sides of that argument. The schools that do the apps and they have them ready and available for smartphones, I find that they're very pleased with it. They like it. They like it, especially from the standpoint of push notifications. And so once then they can push something out to parents in a matter of seconds. They can push things out to students in a matter of seconds, their faculty, their staff. And so with that in mind, there is certainly value there. But I think one of the keys here we're talking about is, as you gather information, being able to gather that cell phone number and being able to gather that that email address. I know you gather it from your parents, but are you gathering that information from your alums? Are you gathering that information from past parents? Are you gathering that information from parishioners? Do you make sure that you've got that information with prospective families that are expressing interest in your school? I think that really becomes important to have that kind of information. And as we said, here's an example of some topics that we've seen just in the last month of schools that are using those short 1 to 2 minute videos. They introduced the school year. They introduced the annual appeal. They've got testimonials. That doesn't mean this is a testimony from a student, another video with a testimony from a parent, from an alum, from a donor, a video that wishes people Merry Christmas and other holiday celebrations, encouraging people to give in terms of year in giving. You're coming up at the end of 2017. Why not put out a video clip that invites people that may want to take advantage of year in giving to close out, this calendar year, have them consider that. That is a wonderful way to use a little short video, as you wrap up your annual appeal, in the 2017-18 school year. And as you near the end of June, being able to do that to close that out too. There's so many uses that, once again, I've always said, there are many sources. I like one source. One, it says transforming parish communications, but it also includes schools, but it has some wonderful ideas. I like most about that is that they've got a checklist of whether or not you have an effective website. It's a book by Scott Landry, a Catholic leader. And then there's also a couple other sources. NCA also has a lot of resources in regards to communication, social media. I noticed at the NCA convention, I also noticed at the International Stewardship Conference convention this past year in Atlanta, there were more presentations on this topic than any. So I really encourage you to take a look at ways that you can do this. I know that many of you are already doing it. And I just encourage you to continue and making sure that we always say, make sure the message grows out of your mission, grows out of your vision, grows out of your top 10 selling points, and grows out of your wow. If those 4 areas are the basic common denominator of your social media communication, then we feel that you got you hit a home run. What is your culture of giving in your Catholic school? Now, what do we mean by that? We mean, how do you invite a gift? How does the people that you are inviting, how do they give a gift, and what kind of opportunities do they have to give the gift? And then how do you, as a Catholic school, receive the gift? Now, all of these things are what we call establishing a culture of giving. You are what you are right now, here in almost December of 2017. Tomorrow, you come up in the last month of the year. Ask yourself, what kind of culture of giving do we have? When we call a level 1 that there's little or no culture of giving, a level 2, a basic culture of giving, a level 3 intermediate, and level 4 advanced. Now let's delve into this a bit, because I think it is important. When we talk about a level 1, when people are invited, nothing really is personalized. It's something that, an email blast is sent out. A direct mail letter is sent out to dear parent or dear alum or dear parishioner. Nothing is personal. The invitation process is not personalized. In terms of giving, people are invited to give to what's always been given to. Many times that could be the gap. Many times that could be tuition assistance. Receiving, there is little acknowledgement. Nothing, certainly nothing personalized. Now, I'm not saying that this is where you are. I'm saying that this is what we describe and define as level 1. So there's really not a lot that's going on with level 1. Level 2, we call it the basic culture of giving. There's a lot of inviting, but a lot of that is quantity. You've been able to reach out to more alums. The giving is very similar to level 1, what has always been done, and the receiving, there is some acknowledgement. But, levels 1 and 2, you really have not made that leap. You're moving, if you're on level 2, you're moving in that direction. But where we like to see Catholic schools is in that level 3, where you are inviting people with more eyeball-to-eyeball invitations, with creative ways for people to become engaged. People are giving their gifts in terms of what they enjoy sharing with that Catholic school. Give you an example. Yesterday, I was working with a school, and we were talking to a potential major donor. These husband and wife are in their early 70s. They had 3 children that graduated from the school. They have 8 grandchildren, and 2 of them are still in the school. And in terms of this, the school had invited them to come and have lunch. They wanted to show them the new Makers Lab. They wanted to show them some new additions to technology. They wanted to take the wife, who was an alum from the class of '67, and show her what she once saw when she was there and how those facilities have been transformed. That whole process took about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. As the conversation went on, we were able, obviously, to pick up on a number of things that they were very interested in. And one of those things that they were very interested in is technology. And in terms of this year's annual appeal, this school is looking at increasing tuition assistance. They were looking at technology upgrades in every classroom. And they were also looking at being able to offer faculty professional growth opportunities. As we wrapped up the tour and came back, sat in the president's office and talked about it, as the conversation ended, once again, we invited them to consider, those 3 areas of what we were looking at. And immediately they said, we are very interested in tuition assistance. And with that in mind, we shared with them the fact that tuition assistance was one of the key case points for this year's annual appeal, and asked them would they consider a gift as a continual donor to be part of this particular circle, so to speak, where if they give $5,000 a year every year over a period of years, they become part of this circle. And they agreed. In fact, they actually ended up giving $10,000 a year, to this particular circle. Granted, it was a secondary school, but at the same time, as you take a look, if you're an elementary school principal or you're an elementary school working in development, this also becomes something that you need to look at, getting people on campus, giving them tours, inviting them, but the conversation allowed the case points to be surfaced. And so therefore, based upon that, we were able to match what that particular donor wanted to do with what the need of the school was. The 4th level is obviously an advanced culture. It's mostly personalized, one-on-one. Schools are making as many as 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 or more personal invitations. People are creative in giving their gifts. They're establishing naming opportunities. They're establishing endowments. They're doing things that are creative. Excellent acknowledgement, appreciation, affirmation. There's appreciation gatherings and the like. So, as you look at these different levels of giving that establish your culture, I think what becomes really important, is to be able to work toward those 3 levels of in terms of that intermediate and that advanced culture of giving. Where are you? How do you invite? How do people give? How do you receive those gifts? Once again, whole lesson in the book about it. One of the things that we've often referred to in these classes is how do we create that written strategic plan for development? Once again, these slides I'm showing you here and the next 3 or 4 are certainly not new to you at all. But how do we shift that paradigm of fundraising dollars to people? And so many Catholic schools do have some type of long-range plan in place, whether that long-range plan has been mandated by the diocese, whether it is because of some type of accreditation agency, North Central, Southern, SACS, or whatever. But what we're talking about in this lesson is what we call the strategic plan for development. Where does this fit in? This is a plan that is created specifically to address the school's short and long-range vision in development and advancement. This is what we're talking about. This is a specific plan for development. And as you know, we talk about advancement, development, and there's those 6 boxes, which we'll look at in a minute. To start all this, one of the things those of you who would be coming to the summer course at the University of Dayton, we're going to actually work heavily in this particular arena this summer, because we are going to plan to make sure that you're able to leave that class with an outline of all of this. Obviously, you want to take a look as you move into the spring of 2018. What is working well in development? What do you have in place? What needs improvement? Ways you can do that is, well, there are all kind of ways. Interviews, if you've got a core team in place. That TFS test that we covered back in an earlier class. Doing a SWOT analysis of development with your administration or with your core team, maybe just the people, the 2, 3, 4 people who are working with development, doing, what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses, what are our opportunities, what are our threats, don't forget the 6 areas that we're looking at assessing, and the 6 areas that we're going to ask you to draw from. That constituent relations, that's that first box. Communications, which includes everything, your website, your social media, your direct mail, all that communications, your enrollment management, your fund development, which is the annual fund, the capital campaign, which we'll discuss at the next class, the, plan giving, endowed giving, memorial giving, all that is fund development, alumni involvement, and then special fundraising events. So those are the 6 boxes, don't forget. And so if we look at putting this plan together, there are steps that we really want to encourage you to take, and you'll get the recording and you'll get the slides. Have that core team in place. I don't know that I would begin this process without the core team in place, and I think you'll see why. They're going to drive it. They're going to be that group we talked about early on of people that are dedicated and committed and loyal. And let's go back to our diagram. Remember, I said we're going to talk about this diagram. We've shown you this 5 or 6 times in 5 or 6 of these classes, where you've got up here your development advancement officers. Please do not take that literally. A number of you are elementary schools without development officers. So this could be the principal. This could be a volunteer. But once again, regardless, put that core team in place. Put the people fuel in place in terms of, and we've given many ways to make that happen. What you're looking at is creating a written strategic plan for your development advancement efforts. And you're going to draw that from these 6 boxes in terms of constituent relations and records, in terms of communications, in terms of enrollment management, fund development, alumni involvement, and fundraising events. This is that organizational structure that we talk about so much, which we really feel is key to making sure things move forward. So as you look at this, let's just kind of define it a little bit, so you know what we're talking about. Constituent records could be as simple as an Excel spreadsheet. It could be Razor's Edge or eTapestry from Blackbaud. Once again, it could be any of these things, but the success of your development efforts will find their base in your constituent records. The communication piece. The communication piece has all kinds of components, dealing with the school's brand and your top 10 and your newsletters, your brochures, your website, social media, emails. You can all see these things that become part of that communication area. The enrollment management. We have enrollment management as part of the overall development advancement structure and not set off by itself and called admissions. I want to read this next part, and pardon me for reading, because as a teacher I used to hate to read to students, but I have to read this. Catholic schools manage their entire enrollment process, from attracting families to enrolling students to retain those students. The enrollment and management area depends and interacts with many areas of this organizational structure. The 2 we've already identified, constituent records and communications, are prime examples. How can you separate enrollment management from constituent records? How could you separate it from communication? How could you separate enrollment management from alumni? Because many alums are going to send their kids to your school. So fund development is, as we said, annual, capital, major gift portfolios, endowments, plan giving. That's what we mean by fund development. That's where this all fits. Alumni involvement, obviously dealing with, this whole idea of seeing this systemically, and so that sentence, this area interfaces with so many of the other areas we have mentioned thus far. Notice how alums goes into constituent records, goes into communications, goes into fund development. All of these are interconnected. And then obviously the fundraising events. We've talked about this before, so I'm not going to go back into this, but it's that, buy, sell way of thinking versus inviting people to invest. Okay? So as you look at this and you've done your assessment, you've got your core team, you understand the 6 areas, after you've done this assessment, what you want to do is you want to use your findings. In other words, what's working well, what needs improving, what are you threatened by, what are those future opportunities? And what we say based upon these 6 areas is to create 6 or 10 challenges around the 6 areas, 6 or 10 challenges. And we like the challenges to begin with how can we? For example, how can we invite, involve, and engage more of alumni into the life of our Catholic school? How can we better educate our parents in what it actually costs to educate each and every student in our Catholic school? These are challenges, okay? These are challenges. So as you look at these 6 areas of constituent relations and communications and fund development and alumni involvement and fundraising, as we said, as you look at all of this, make sure, in enrollment management, make sure that you look at this from the standpoint of how they're all connected. You want to create the challenges. Who creates the challenges? The core team, and the administration and those working in development create. And I always say create 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I would not create any more than that, okay? Other examples, how can we move from a direct mail annual fund drive to one that reaches out personally? Another example, how can we better educate and have everyone understand that enrollment management is everyone's responsibility? Another one, how can we stop so many nickel and dime fundraising efforts and move more toward inviting people to invest in our mission and vision? These are, in these slides here, these are 5 examples of challenges. And as you look at these, once again, this is what you're going to bring to what we call the Development Planning Committee. Now, the Development Planning Committee, you've got a core team, and what we do and what we recommend is we ask the core team, would you please recommend, let's say you have 15 to 18 members on your core team, would you please recommend, 7 people that are not that much involved in the school, and you'd like them to be part of a core team of people, you'd like for them to be part of a development planning committee, and then would like for you to list, in terms of that, 5 people that you already know are involved in the school. So we're asking you to recommend 12 people, and this would be for the development planning committee. 7 of them, are not much involved. 5 of them are involved. So we're asking each core team member. Now, what's interesting is that if you have 15 people that are doing this, obviously if you do the math and multiply 7 times 15, you can see you're going to get a lot of names, but you can also get some duplicates and triplets and quadruplets, which is fine because people then are saying the same thing about some people. So once again, we like the core team to do this, and then obviously the advancement folks or the administration, whatever your structure is, you're going to come up with people too. We want you to come up with, and so I hope you're sitting down when I'm getting ready to say this, we want you to come up with 100 names. And I know immediately there are those that say, we don't know 100 people. Well, sure you do. I mean, even if you look at your parents and your parishioners and your alums and your past parents, and your grandparents and your faculty and your staff and your board and your councils, you know 100 people. So what we find is that if you are able to put this group together, and not all of them are going to come, what we find that when personally invited, you're going to get 50 to 60% of these people who will get involved. And what do we want them to do? We want them to come and understand what's going on with our development effort. We want them to give their best input and wisdom to help solve those challenges that have been created. We're going to want them to offer those solutions, prioritize those strategies, those solutions, and then for those who want to be further involved, to help implement. Usually this is done in 3 or 4 meetings or workshops. And that depends upon whether you're going to go 7 to 9 p.m. or 6 to 9. If you can go 7 to 9, it may take you 4. May not. or 6 to 9 would probably take you 3. So you want to personally invite every person. They receive a letter of invitation from the pastor, the president, the principal, whoever is the person or persons in charge. They receive a letter, and they do a follow-up phone call with core team members. And I always have core team members call the people that they recommended if their names, hit the final list. But you want to get that list to 100. Don't shy away from that. So you're going to send out a letter of invite. You're going to include the agenda for the first meeting. You're going to give them the dates and times of the other 3 meetings. And then the follow-up phone call is a must-do. And a personal email the day before the first meeting is preferred. Now, if you do that with a personal, letter, with a copy of the agenda, with a list of the dates of the meetings, and you follow it up with a phone call invitation, and the day or 2 before the first meeting of the Development Planning Committee, you send an email saying, looking forward to seeing you, you should get anywhere between 40 and 60% participation. That's been the norm for us. Sometimes on the high side, I'm working with one group right now where it's 70% participation. And a lot of that is because the pastor and the principal really wanted about 10 or 15 people who were not that much involved before. They wanted them to get involved in this, and they actually got on the phone and invited them. So as you look at this, obviously there's going to be logistical things that you'll need. You'll need name tags and sign-in sheets and some breakout rooms, and you're going to need, we like those 3M Post-it flip charts that you can put up on walls. Don't mess up the paint. Don't mess up the walls. Don't mess up the dry erase boards. And so, you have all this, and then you've got your first meeting. So here's the first meeting, and basically you've got all this ready. You start with opening prayer and introductions, give the goals, objectives. Who's doing this? Many times it can be done by the principal. It can be done by the person working with advancement. It could be done by a core team member. It could be done by a board member. It could be done by outside facilitator. Whatever you're doing, there's somebody who MCs this, okay? And so then usually the principal is going to start off just kind of giving the state of the school, how things going, what's going well in 17, 18, 18, 19, whatever that school year is. Someone is going to educate them on Catholic school development. And this is what we've been talking about, possibly showing them the 7 I's, possibly talking about development as the meaningful involvement of people in your mission and vision for the future, possibly talking about belonging leads to believing, all of that and you've got PowerPoints that you can pull slides from that we've sent you that you could certainly use. You've got a whole book of things that you can use, and those of you that have ordered the workbook, there are ways for you to be able to implement that too. So in this first meeting, you're going to review the challenges. So the whole group is still together. You've got these 60 people sitting in the cafeteria of the gym, and then you're going to say, in the small group, we're going to want you to introduce yourselves. We're going to make sure you understand these 7 challenges, and then we're going to ask you to just brainstorm solutions. Just brainstorm solutions to these 7 challenges. And then you divide them into 5 to 7 small groups, depending on the number of people there. I like to have a group between 10 and 12. So if I've got 60 people there, then I'm probably going to go for either, probably going to go for 5 or 6 groups. Now, how do I do that, or how do we recommend doing that? I just do the count off. I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the 1s go together, 2s go together, 3s go together, 4s go together. What's interesting is it separates them from the people that they're sitting with, which is oftentimes good. So, then you introduce your facilitators and scribes. Then they move out into the small group work, and that's number 7, where they're going to introduce themselves and start working on the challenges, okay? At the end, you want each group to come back in the last 15 minutes. Let's say it's from 7 to 9 o'clock. You want them to come back along about 20 minutes to 9, and they come back and just share with the large group maybe their one kernel of wisdom. What was their best thought they felt as a small group they came? It may be a solution, maybe just be a thought, Then in the second meeting, you've got opening prayer, review of the first meeting, small group work. They're going to finish with their first sweep brainstorming. They're going to move into their second sweep, where they're going to take those ideas, and we'll show you some examples here in a minute, where they're going to take those ideas that, that they've come up with, and now they're going to move into something that's strategic, measurable, achievable, relevant, and driven by a timetable, and begins with an action verb. And so with that in mind, let me give you some examples. Example, first sweep. Let's say under enrollment management, The challenge is how can we engage more people in our enrollment management effort? The first sweep, the brainstorming sweep, somebody says, we need a student recruitment group. Well, the second sweep, when you refine it, says create, educate, and implement. Notice the action verbs. Create, educate, and implement a student ambassador team to assist with open house, feeder outreach, and other student recruitment activities. Notice this is strategic. You can measure this. It is achievable. It is relevant, and it is driven by a timetable. All right? That's an example. Let's go to another example. Let's say there is communication. How can we personally reach out and communicate with each of our families 4 times a year? First sweep, somebody says, we need to call them. Well, the second sweep says, develop a parent phone outreach process where school advisory council members and core team members will call 5 families per month to say hello, to invite them to something, to inquire how the school year is going, and to ask if the school can do anything to better help them and their children. Once again, strategic, measurable, achievable, relevant, driven by a timetable. Okay? So, third meeting, opening prayer, small group work. They're going to finish with their second sweep, in other words, they're going to take those brainstorming ideas. Now, let's say I've got 10 brainstorming ideas under enrollment management. Does that mean that I have 10 strategic solutions? No, I may have 3. I want something that is quality and not quantity. But those brainstorming ideas may lead that group to things. So it's not a matter of coming up and converting every brainstorming idea into a strategic solution. It is coming and making sure that they're relevant, that they can accomplish that. I always ask them this. I said, can an implementation team take this over and implement it and make it happen? If you can answer yes to that, then boom, you got something going. Then each group is going to multi-vote to get priority order. Now, let me explain what I mean by multi-voting. If you've not used this before, gosh, this has saved thousands of hours. Let's say, I'm going to use a round number because it's really simple. Let's say you had 8 challenges that you presented that your core team and your development and administrative people came up with on the front end of this process. And let's say these 8 challenges were presented to your development advisory council, planning group. And these 8 challenges, they've come up with brainstorming ideas, and they've come up under each of these 8 challenges, they've come up with those 2 or 3 strategic solutions that follow the SMART formula, begin with an action verb. And now, as you look at this, you want to put these 8 challenges in priority order as a small group. In other words, because a small group is going to be asked in either the 3rd or 4th meeting, depending on whether you're doing a 2 or 3 hour meeting, the small group's going to be asked to come back to the large group and present their top challenge. So how do you get to that top challenge? Well, if you have 8 challenges, and I'm the core team member facilitating the group because we want our core team members to facilitate and scribe, I'm going to come back and I'm going to say, okay, guys, you got 8 challenges. And we've been working on these over the last 2 meetings. This is our 3rd meeting. Now, multi-voting is when you take a number like 8. It could be 30, okay, and you divide it in half. So I'm going to look at the group and I'm going to say, as a core team member facilitating, I'm going to say, okay, I want you to select the 4 challenges that you think we should address first. The school should address which 4 challenges. I want you to do this individually. I don't want you to weight them. I don't want you to put them into priority order. I just want you to put a check mark by the 4 challenges you like the best that should be implemented and addressed first. Usually takes them a couple of minutes. After they do that, I said, okay, how many voted for challenge 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? I put the vote tallies next to that, and my top vote getter is my top challenge. If I have a tie, I then do a runoff between those 2. If I got 2 ones that end up with, let's say, 12 votes, then obviously I'm going to say, okay, which one of these? So multi-voting, you could do it. I've done multi-voting with as many as 200 people in a row. And it is just a wonderful way to get at, the priority piece. So in that 3rd meeting, the large group, each group presents their top challenge and one of their strategic solutions. And then I'm going to have the large group. Let's say I got 70 people in the room. I'm going to have the large group multi-vote on all the challenges. It was after they've heard all the presentations from the small groups, I'm going to have them multi-vote on all of the challenges. So I come away with a good barometer from the small group about what they think is the top challenge. Then I come away with a good barometer of what the large group feels of those 8 challenges, is the top 1, 2, 3, and it'll be in priority order because you put the number of votes for each challenge up on a flip chart, and you got the challenges right there. Then we have attendees fill in an individual input form that basically says, would you like to be further involved in the process in terms of helping us implement it? And there's the multi-vote process explained. So once again, that becomes really key. Now, once this is done, then the school leaders and their outside facilitator put the challenges into priority order based upon the large group multi-vote and the small group's priority order. Is it with the hundreds of times I've worked with this process, I can truthfully say I can count on one hand the number of times where the priorities were not really clear-cut. Almost always they're clear-cut. You know which ones, okay? You're going to look at the strategic solutions from each of the small groups of the challenges. You're going to select those top 1 to 2 strategic solutions to solve each of these challenges. You're going to put together 2 or 3 implementation teams that are formed with each team taking on 2 or 3 challenges, and with the core team members tri-chairing the implementation teams. Do you remember back in the beginning of the class, I sent you a copy of a strategic plan from an elementary school and parish that followed this process. And once again, that is what we're talking about here, the implementation teams, okay? So you're going to forecast the plan out for 18 months. You're going to present the plan and the priorities to school leadership groups. You're going to invite and inform and get the implementation teams up and running so they can solve these, begin the implementation and take those solutions and begin moving forward. And once again, this plan is good for 12 to 18 months, and then you want to refresh it, okay? So as you look at this, once again, I talked about this, and I did send this to you, back in the beginning. It was from Our Lady of Perpetual Help in Belle Chase, Louisiana. It was a brochure that really gave you their strategic plan for advancement, for development and stewardship. So this is what we're talking about. If you have this in place, believe me, it makes life so much easier. Why? Because you know your priorities, you know what direction you're going in, and you know what you're doing with it as you move it forward. If you don't have this in place, then obviously, how can you invite and involve? Right now, I'll just use an example of a parish in an elementary school, not Our Lady of Perpetual Help, but another one in the Cincinnati Diocese that basically has gone through this process. And right now they have 4 implementation teams. The core team is in place. They're actually, with the 4 implementation teams, there are 3 or 4 core team members that are chairing this. And they have, each team has between 8 and 12 members on each implementation team. They know what the priority order of moving it forward. They report monthly. They meet monthly. The core team meets monthly, followed by the implementation team members coming in afterward. It's a process that really works, but it has to be refreshed because your challenges are going to change as you take a look at those challenges moving forward. So once again, just once again, talking about the workbook that just came out last week, this kind of walks on through this whole process. And those of you, as I said, that are going to be with us at UD this summer, we're going to make sure that we make sure you leave having your plan in place for the 18-19 school year. So let's look at a few things to kind of close it out because we have some announcements that I think are important. Obviously, with this class, continue to explore the many ways you can utilize social media. And the visual component, that video component, I really encourage you to look at that. The goal here is to strive to either retain or move toward levels 3 and 4 with your culture of giving. Create that strategic plan for development advancement, and as we said, one of those areas of concentration in the summer class. As we move to the final 2 classes, within the next few days, you'll receive the PowerPoint from this class, the YouTube video link, the GoToWebinar link for class number 9, which will be on Friday, December 8th. A reminder of your homework assignment, which is on the next slide. And I've tried to make it as simple as possible, seeing the time of the year that this is. But as we look at it, here's the assignment. Number 1, please list the ways that your Catholic school uses social media. I'd like to be able to read what y'all are doing at the next class. Number 2, in 1 to 3 paragraphs, please describe your culture of giving. You can say, we're at level 1. Just let me know. And based upon the day's class, if you are moving forward in creating a strategic plan for development, what would be the 3 major challenges you would want to solve? Please write each challenge with how can we. Now, you'll see the method in the madness, hopefully. Back in the summer, before the class started, I asked you to send in a discovery form. And in that discovery form, I ask you, what challenges do you face at this time? You can certainly refer to that for this number 3 of the homework assignment. But I want you to ask yourself the question, are the challenges that you put down in August, or early September, or late July, whenever you submitted it, are the challenges the same ones now as you wrap up this calendar year that they were back 5 months ago? So based upon today's class, if you were going to move forward in creating a strategic plan for development, what would be the 3 main challenges? Okay. So once again, I would think that this homework assignment, could be done within a half hour. I would think, if you're working with a group, as some of you are, I think it provokes some excellent discussion. The first one is pretty factual and objective. The second one, I think, will require some discussion, as well as the third one. So those of you, I know a number of schools, there's 2, 3, 4. In fact, we've got 2 schools that have 6 or 7 people that are working and taking this class. So I think 2 and 3 can provide some excellent discussion. Okay. In class 9, we're going to talk about capital campaigns. And that's one of the questions that I have in the survey that'll pop up here in a minute, whether you are in the middle of one, started one, getting ready to start one, thinking about one, completed one. Just need to know where you are with that. And then we're going to talk about how endowment growth can be fueled with planned and capital giving. And we're going to talk about that in lesson 22 and 23. Now, I want you to note this. There's a change of date for our last class. It was originally scheduled for December 18th, but because I had a number of requests that particular date, people were wrapping things up at school. Once again, this is something where we'll send out the YouTube recording. As long as your homework and everything like this is in by the end of the calendar year, you're in good shape. A number of you are going to receive continuing education units from the University of Dayton, and a number of you are going to receive a very nice certificate from the University of Dayton, your certificate of completion. So don't worry about this in terms of how soon do I have to get it in. As long as we get your homework in by the end of the calendar year, or certainly by the first week in January, everything is fine. Everything is fine. But we do need to move that last class to Thursday, December 21st. I will send out several reminders about this. And in fact, we even had some people, when they found out about it, said, good, I'm not in school. I'm going to maybe in school, but my students are not here. So anyway, in the last class, we're going to discuss this whole idea of being open to change and shifts in thinking. We're going to talk about exploring new sources of revenue. This lesson 25 is also going to be a topic this summer at UD. We're going to talk about exploring new ways of revenue over and above what will be presented in this class. There are several schools we're working with that have done some very creative things in regards to new sources of revenue. And then, of course, we will close it out with some parting thoughts and wrap up this class. So, any questions? Let's see if we have any questions that folks may have. terms of this, here's one question. What percentage of Catholic schools do you see on the elementary school level who are using social media vehicles? You know, of the ones that we see in our classes and the ones we see in in our workshops and webinars and seminars and consulting on site and all that, I would say with elementary schools in some form or another, you know, you have well over 50 to 60% of the elementary schools that are doing it. Many times it is Facebook, that having Facebook pages. So once again, that becomes something that you'd want to look at from the standpoint of making sure that you've got, you know, that whole piece about having some kind of social media vehicle, whether it's Facebook, Twitter. Twitter is where things are going, believe me. That's why that, you know, that email and that text, that cell phone is so important. Summer program information. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, I'm going to be in Dayton. Today, I'm in Indianapolis, actually presenting this from Cecina Memorial High School. I want to thank Joe Thurber, the president, and his folks here for providing the facilities and the space to present this. But tomorrow morning, I'm going to be over at UD, meeting with Sister Angela. She's in charge of this program. And we will finalize the summer information program. We'll be sending out the dates of that next week, and we'll be sending out when that will be. We're looking at either a 3 or a 4-day session. We're going to, like this class, going to try to make it as financially affordable as possible, and we should get that out to you next week. And let's see. What constitutes excellent acknowledgement of a gift? I've always said that, you know, excellent acknowledgement of a gift is within a week that the gift is received, that there is a personal letter that goes out to the donor, signed by the pastor, the principal, the president, whatever your administration is. In some cases where there are key major gifts that come in, I usually, if a gift comes in of the $500 range, $250, $1,000, whatever, and above, you know, usually within 48 hours, I like for someone at that school to pick the phone up and say thank you. So I think that would be some guidelines that we say are really important, you know, to follow in terms of that giving. Please stay on the line. And because there's a survey, and there's several questions on this survey that I really ask you to take. One is, we just want to find out what kind of database you're using, software you're using. Number 2 is we want to find out, you know, where you are with your capital campaign piece. And then lastly, we're getting ready to do the final promotion for our spring class. Spring class already is filling up quickly, but we want to put some testimonials in there. So if you feel like this is something that you would be receptive to doing, there's a little spot there for you to talk about this class and has it been of value to you. So once again, hopefully this has been helpful. I look forward to the next class dealing with capital campaigns. And then we also look forward to wrapping it up there on December 21st. So thank you all. Great work on your part. And thank you, so many of you, for your kind comments about how the class is helpful to you, and just great to hear and great to see the progress that is being made in many, many schools. So thank you, God bless, and we'll see you in a week or so.